السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، صلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد سيدنا وسندنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومولانا صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته وأهل بيته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. So we continue where we left off yesterday. We were talking about the prohibition of looking at the haram and how people generally take that hukum, that commandment, to be in a very particular context, and it definitely does exist in that particular context, but it exists in so much more than that as well. So the author continues, Ibn Abi Zayd rahimahullah tabarak wa ta'ala, he says, وَلَيْسَ فِي النَّظَرَةِ الْأُولَى بِغَيْرِ تَعَمُّدٍ حَرَجٍ. And this is a takhfif and a reassurance from the shari'ah alayhi salatu wassalam, that if you see something haram by accident or by necessity, a person is walking in the street and they see someone they shouldn't see, or they see something that they shouldn't see, the first look is not a sin, as long as it's not done with intention, as long as it's done without intentionality. And this is important to remember, that Allah Ta'ala created this, He created this world, and it's an imperfect place. And don't let that imperfection get you bent out of shape, because it's a problem. The first problem that people have to get over is apathy, that nobody cares, halal, haram, dirty, clean. All of it is the same to a dead heart. In fact, a really like messed up heart will actually prefer the dirty to the clean and the haram to the permissible. And this is part of the secret why nifaq, why hypocrisy is worse, the worst of types of kufr, because it involves a type of deviation that can only be achieved with knowledge. Whereas those people who are described, the people of kufr that are described in the Quran as an'am, as grazing animals, or even less guided than them, they're just kind of doing what they're doing. They're not necessarily intending to disobey Allah, and they're not necessarily intending to obey Him. They're just doing random stuff, and it's not really all that helpful for them. So at any rate, the point is that the first stage is getting over apathy. And then after that, when once you're over that, some people slip into this kind of like pigeonhole where they get bent out of shape over everything in the world that's not right. And you can't solve everything. You're not the one who created the heavens and the earth. You're not the one who la yastaghna anhu طرفة عين ومن استغنى عنه طرفة عين كفر صار من أهل الخسران. That you're not the one who, the entire heavens and the earth is dependent on you, and the heavens and the earth can't do anything without you. And whoever wrongly believes that the heavens and the earth can do something without you, you have left the deen and become from the people of perdition. That's Allah, and لا يفنى ولا يبيد ولا يكون إلا ما يريد. It's the Nas al-Tahawiyah, that He will never be extinguished, nor will He cease to exist, and nothing occurs or nothing exists in this universe except for because of His irada, because He wants it to exist. And someone might say, well, how can He want sin to exist? He wants sin to exist because He wants the person committing the sin to be punished for it. Or He wants somebody to be harmed by it, or He wants someone to be patient with it, and then that person will be elevated in rank, etc., etc. Like the brothers of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, they put Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam through so much difficulty, and they all made tawbah at the end. So inshallah, they're all from the people of Jannah afterward. And so it's not even necessarily because He wants to punish somebody, but He wants something out of it. And if Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, didn't get thrown in the well, then he wouldn't have been sold to slavery into Egypt, and then he wouldn't have been raised in the house of the Aziz, and then he wouldn't have been false accused, and then he wouldn't have been cellmates with the steward of the king, and then he wouldn't have interpreted the king's dream, then he wouldn't have been prime minister, and you know, and then he wouldn't have you know, fulfilled the dream that he had, that Allah said he was going to be fulfilled, and he wouldn't have been able to save the people of Egypt from starvation. You know, and so, like, you know, there's so many hikam, there's so much wisdom mutaratib on that. So don't walk around. The point is, in this, the wisdom that we pull from this hukam of the first look being free is not what, like, whatever, like, bro Islam, you know, like, oh dude, you know, like, the first look's free, so make sure you take a good look. That's not the point. Any part that of the first look that has intentionality is just as haram as any other look. But the point is, don't walk around getting bent out of shape. Don't walk around being like, oh, I hate everybody. Why is, you know, why is this woman dressed this way? Why is this person dressed that way? Why is this thing happening? Why is that thing? Why? You don't ask why when it comes to Allah. Allah is the one ultimately who chooses why things happen. We're obliged to hate sin. We're not obliged to make sure that the heavens and the earth runs with infallibility. And so the first look being free is actually a takhfif. It's like a liberation and a manumission and a commuting of your sentence, that you know, just look away and move on with your life. Don't be so consumed and subsumed with how wrong everybody else is that you it impedes you from knowing what your purpose is and, you know, what you want to do that's right in the world. If everybody in an instant, you know, wal-iyadu billah, Allah protect us, if everybody was to leave the deen except for you. So the big Maulana Sahib who's talking shop about Maliki Fiqh, you see him tomorrow, you know, doing something untoward. And the masajid, you see them filled with idols, and it's all gone. All the Islam is gone. It's just you. Are you going to spend the rest of your life talking about how bogus everybody else is, or are you going to still worship Allah? Are you going to spend the rest of your life hating on everybody else, or are you still going to make your peace with your Lord before you leave? You know, and this is what this is all about. That if you see something that you're not supposed to see, look away, keep moving. Look away and keep moving. ولا حرج في النظر إلى المتجالة ولا في النظر إلى الشعبة لعذر من شهادة عليها وشبهه وقد أرخص في ذلك للخطاب. And so there's a couple of more exceptions. So there's no haraj in looking at like an old woman, a woman who's become so old that there's, you know, that a person wouldn't desire her anymore. And so someone might say, well, these things are all relative, and they are all relative. You know, like you know, some women age very gracefully, some men age very gracefully as well, and some of us are a complete car accident. And there's a wisdom in Allah giving every condition to every person. But you know, the mutajalla, the woman who's become so old that she's no longer desired in that way. And on the flip side, you know, if a woman is reading, the man who's become so old that he's no longer desired in that way. And with it also is then like the same-sex attraction as well. Then there's no harm in looking at that person with need. Now, or there's no harm at looking at that person when you talk to them. One of the wisdoms in mentioning this right now is that so that people don't get into this, like, I don't know, weird, like, misogynistic or like awkward antagonism to the opposite gender or to somebody, you know, to the gender of attraction. That women are not evil. I remember myself, I mean, like, you know, I was hardcore as a student. Allah forgive me now. Like, I feel like perhaps, you know, things have calmed down since then. Although a person moves in their iman through different phases, you know. So inshallah, you know, but there was a lot of fervor I used to hold very close and very hard and fast to what I learned in a way that, like, was, you know, it characterizes the heat of youth. And so I remember once one of my mother's cousins came to Al-Ain where I was studying, and my mother mentioned that to me, and I was a young man, unmarried, etc. So I asked my ustad that I read this book from, my sheikh, I asked him, I said that this woman is coming, but she's not a mahram because she's my mother's cousin. So would it be proper for me to visit her, or should I just like you make an excuse and duck out? And the Sheikh says, not only is it proper for you to visit her, it's her right that you should visit her, and you should honor her as if she's your mother. And I don't know, like now, after having studied for a while, it seems like duh, like that's obviously the answer. But at the time when someone doesn't tell you, because you don't want to be nonchalant and you don't want to be like flippant about the ahkam and dismiss something that you should be observing when you should be observing it. But like there's a kind of weird, I think I can see if people don't have connection with the scholars, with the ulama and the people who can guide them on these things, how they could like, you know, like go so hardcore, and then after a while, like that men actually start to resent women, and women start to resent men, and like look at them as evil. And it's a type of this happens in Christianity, where like there's a type of misogyny that creeps in. And the Prophet ﷺ wasn't a misogynist. He loved women. You know, he loved women. He had he loved women in all different contexts. He loved, you know, he loved his wives. He loved his mothers. He treated his mother with his own mother with love, and mentioned her with love and reverence. You know, he treated his mother Halimatu Sa'diyah, his foster mother, with love and reverence. He treated his mother Ayman Barakatul Habashiyah, his Abyssinian foster mother, with so much love and you know, so much respect. And you know, he took care of her needs. He took her seriously. He had a sister. He had a foster sister. You know, he treated her well. She's you know, Shayma, the daughter of Halimatu Sa'diyah, you know, and the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you know, his daughters, look how much he loved his daughters and how well he treated them. Look how beautifully he dealt with the ladies of the Ansar, how beautifully he dealt with the ladies of the Muhajirin, how beautifully he dealt with the Muslimat, with the women of Islam. You know, he was not a misogynist by any stretch of the imagination, like duck and run. Oh my God, there's a woman, she's gonna like destroy me. Now, obviously, he's the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and everybody has to like play this thing at their level. So if you're like a super hormoned out like 17-year-old, then now is not the time for you to like super engross yourself in like whatever, being, you know, super friendly with the ladies. Why? Because there's a danger for you at that point. But that's not about them. That's about you. You know what I mean? So don't let it be, you know, that you make the opposite gender into an, you know, that they're all evil. And some brothers do this and some sisters do this. All men are evil. All women are evil. All men are this. All women are this. How are you going to, this is the complete like plot of shaitan, that if you resent one another, you're just going to destroy the human race. I mean, how are you going to make a family if you think that like the other half of the genome of your progeny is necessarily evil? And so it's good, you know, like, you know, the mutajalla, that there's no harm from her potentially in this regard. It's okay, you know, like if it's your mother, it's your mother's friends, you know, it's okay. Honor them, treat them differently than you would, like, you know, the girl from, you know, across the street who makes you feel funny or whatever. There's a difference. But even the girl from across the street who makes you feel fine, she's a human being, you know what I mean? And that's not her fault, nor is it her problem. So when you're avoiding her in order to spare her from your harm and spare yourself from her harm, or you know, remember this avoidance is not because there's anything wrong with her. Even a person's like, well, she dresses this way and she this and that. Okay, fine. Everybody has sins. Maybe she dresses that way for some insecurity that she has, or for some other issue. She doesn't know better. She's not doing it in order to destroy you. Now, that may be a side consequence, you know. And so people should also be very careful about how they present to the opposite gender, to not be a fitna for that person. We don't subscribe to this theory in Islam, like, well, that's their problem and they should like just lower their gaze and then you know, walk around dressed up, done up like a peacock. You know, that's not you should have some consideration, some concern how you appear in front of other people. And at the same time, you know, like if a woman or a man for that matter dresses a certain way, and then someone wal-iyadhu billah, does something bad to them or sexually abuses them, it's not their fault, because nobody deserves to be abused. So there's like so much going on. There's so much false I guess, false equivalency and so much like generalization that happens. There's a lot more going on here than I think first meets the eye. But the sensibility of the sunnah, at any rate, to make a long story short, is that there's nothing evil about a person that you're attracted to. You just spare yourself from their harm. They spare themselves from yours. And the dalil is what if somebody becomes older, if somebody's in a position where they're no longer a fitna for that, for that thing, then you revert to the default, which is to treat them like you would treat anybody else. And he mentions that even a woman who is attractive, there's no harm in looking at her for a necessity, a sharia countenance necessity. And we mentioned some of those things from before, which is the, for example, giving testimony in the court, or something, a legal necessity like that, or and that's what he mentions. He says also there's also permission for looking at a girl that you're thinking about marrying. In fact, it's a sunnah to look at a girl that you're thinking about marrying. In fact, don't marry a girl that you're not attracted to. There's a quote that is attributed to Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, and I'm not sure about the veracity of the quote. Maybe if Sheikh Musa listens later or something like that, he can straighten it out. But I read somewhere that said that let a man first see what a woman looks like if he's interested in marriage, and then afterward ask about her deen. Because if he sees her and he's not attracted to her, and he says no because of that, that's more seemly than if he asks about her deen and he's pleased with her deen, and then he finds out afterward that he's not attracted to her and says no. So that's that. And same-sex attraction is a thing that was there in human societies. Some societies suffer from it more than others, but it's something that we should talk about and deal with as well. Because just because a person is attracted to the same gender doesn't necessarily mean that person is even a bad person. Oftentimes these are, there's a whole discussion, are people born that way or not? And I don't have a horse in that race. Allah knows best, But what I do know, at least anecdotally, is that a majority of the people who have same-sex attraction, especially for gay men, that I've anecdotally dealt with, they've been abused as children somehow. And so at any rate, it's involuntary. It's like this thing that's there with them, and they've been shackled with it because of somebody else's abuse. It's involuntary. So if they suffer from that thing, it in and of itself doesn't mean that they're bad people or evil people or they're going to hell. The sin is acting on it. The sin is not having the attraction. The sin is acting on it. If the person resists the attraction, that person will be that person will be rewarded more than a person who doesn't have to deal with that fitna. But there is a difference between a non-mahram woman who's not who's still of like age that a person would be attracted to her, and then there's a difference between and definitely in that is all non-mahram women who are still like that haven't hit menopause yet. And then there's a difference between that and between like a man who's attracted to other men. Why? Because the ahkam of the shari'ah, they function on certain defaults, and then afterward, in exceptional cases, there are exceptional rules, but the rules are based on the defaults, on the general condition of people. So in that sense, in general, it is haram for a non-mahram man to look at the awra of a non-mahram woman, and vice versa. And then also, it is not permissible to look at each other for more than what is necessary. And those exceptions, we mentioned some of them in the book just now. And so, how do we deal with like same-sex attraction then? Hazrat Maulana Hakim al-Ummah Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah ta'ala was actually asked this question from a disciple of his. And look at this, this is his disciple is a scholar, and he teaches Quran to children. And he has this fear inside of him that I don't know if I'm attracted to the children or not. I don't know if I'm attracted to the young boys or not. And so he writes to his sheikh to ask, what should I do? Because what happens is sometimes people have these thoughts that come to their minds, and they may actually freak out and run away when they shouldn't run away. or they may ignore it and actually do something bad with it. So he's asking his sheikh, he said, I don't know, is this like really a problem for me? Because I've never done anything like this before, but like the thought comes to my mind that what if you have this attraction for this, for the children or whatever, you're getting sin from this. So Hazrat Tanvi, he said he made a very simple tajweez or solution to this problem, to figure out what should he do. He said that the boys that you teach, if you sit them on your lap and you feel awkward inside when that happens, you feel something sexual move inside of you, you feel some sort of pleasure or something like that, he said that it's haram for you to teach the children. Don't teach them. If you can sit the child on your lap and just play with it like a little, you play with the little kid, it's not sexual, then he said, then this is just a wahm, this is just a waswasa that's inside of your head, and put it aside and keep going on and teaching. That's the benchmark also for a person with a person of the opposite, with the person of the same gender. With the opposite gender, the rules are very clear. Even if you're not attracted to them, the rules are still very clear. It doesn't really make much of a difference if you're attracted or not, because eventually two people of the opposite gender and normal disposition, if they have enough contact with each other, they're able to do what people of the opposite gender do when there's enough contact with each other. However, with the opposite gender, or with the same gender, it can be a little tricky. So if you feel that feeling when you're alone or close or touching a person of the same gender, then a person should, a person knows that this person also, to look at them, the hukum changes, that it becomes haram, and to touch them like that becomes haram. To be alone with them, depending on how intense those feelings are, then be alone with them can become haram. All those things can become haram. And I'm not the person who's going to start calling people names. If this is the condition you suffer from, this is a condition you suffer from. Allah give you patience and protect all of us from the evil of our own nafs. Everybody has some different desire that they have that is not conformant with the shari'ah, that they struggle with at some point or another. Allah help you with your struggle, but you got to be honest with yourself. You got to control yourself. If this is the thing that you're suffering from, figure it out, and then impose that part of the sharia on yourself in order to save yourself from it, and then move on. Don't beat yourself up like, oh, I'm this and that, I'm defective, I'm bad, and so start calling yourself names and things like that. And what happens? Shaitan likes people to do that. Why? Because it causes them to give up hope, and it causes them to then want to give up. And I'll tell you this, Allah Ta'ala, alhamdulillah, has spared me from this fitna, but I know people who suffer from this fitna, and they struggle with their own selves, and many of them are, they're like the awliya of Allah. I mean, they're people, they go, they do hajj, they read, they study, they pray, they do all of these things. And Allah Ta'ala can give such a person a very high rank, a person can, and like I said, these are exceptional matters. So if a person is confused about these things, I advise that they go and find one of the ulama and take advice from them, someone that they trust, and somebody who's learned in the law and also has some sort of modicum of common sense, rather than going to the most gung-ho person who's just going to be like, haram, go kill yourself or whatever. It's really bad. I get like all kinds of emails and communications. There was a woman who had some issue of a sexual nature, some sin she did, and it was pretty bad. It was not good. And she said that I asked a local imam, and he said for me that the only tawbah is for me to kill myself. Is that true? I said there's no crime or sin in the sharia that the thing, the punishment prescribed for it is to kill yourself. What you did is admittedly bad, but you seem to be cognizant of how bad it is now. So just don't do it again. Feel bad about it. Just don't do it again, and stay away from the means to do it again, and just let it be done. Allah Ta'ala oftentimes will, give us these tests, these spiritual and moral tests, as a way for us to humble ourselves. Don't think don't think that you're cool. Don't think you're all spiritual CD out to the 7th degree. He knows who fears him. And sometimes a couple of sins under the belt makes a person humble instead of being arrogant. And that's not to say that it's okay to sin in order to become humble, but if it happened, then just remember those things. Once, when you read your Taraweeh and you're feeling all Ramadan high as a kite and judgmental about people, remember those sins enough to like put your feet back down on the ground and to feel bad, so that you can repent in earnest and sincerity. Allah Ta'ala doesn't need to punish anybody. Allah Ta'ala doesn't want to punish anybody. You know what I mean? He doesn't need to punish anybody, and he doesn't want to punish everybody, I should say. And he's the one who kataba ala nafsihi rahmah. He fixed as a commandment over himself of mercy. And he's the one who declared that my mercy outstrips my wrath. And he's Arhamar Rahimin. He's the most merciful, the merciful. And he's the one who said in his book, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إنه يغفر الذنوب جميعا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Say, Ya Muhammad, alayka salatu wassalam, O my slaves who have wronged themselves, don't ever give up hope in the mercy of Allah. Indeed, He forgives all sins. Indeed, He was always the forgiving and the merciful. So, see, we have a couple of questions, it looks like, here on the docket. It's a super basic Maliki. So we'll get to that at the end. How about cousins? I am a Latino convert and I got a lot of girl cousins. I am still trying to navigate that with my big family. I see a lot of them as sisters. I know they are non-mahram, though in the shari'ah. Yeah, so this goes to corroborate a theory that I hold, which is like, Latino is just alt Desi, or Desi is alt Latino, whichever way makes you feel happy. But that's the case, that's the case with a lot of us. I suspect that the Arabs are like that as well. And yeah, that's the same thing growing up. Our female cousins were like sisters to us. And but the Sharia is the Sharia. So obviously your first cousin or whatever is not like just some like random woman off the street. Okay. So if you talk to her in the sense like, how are you? How's your mother? Do you need anything? Can I help you move this and that? Like those things, those are very normal for that context. But it doesn't mean that like you compliment her on her hair and like you hang out the two of you alone and you look her up and down. At some point or another, you cross that line. So just be, and so that has to do with what? It has to do with who that person is, who you are, and what your state is, what their state is. So if they don't observe boundaries with you, you got to protect yourself. If you find yourself not observing boundaries with them, you also have to protect yourself and protect them as well. And, if they're live like whatever in Costa Rica and you like never met them, ever, you don't have to call them and talk to them on the phone every day. But if they're your neighbors and like you go to their house all the time and whatever, there's a certain modicum of interaction that is customary. If you are free from harm from it, that's fine. But under no circumstance are you allowed to like look at them more than is necessary in order to keep your familial relations. Under no circumstance are you allowed to look at their aura. Under no circumstance, if you enjoy and get some sort of pleasure out of looking at them. And that doesn't, when we say sexual pleasure, that doesn't just mean like, in the grossest sense of the word. But, even just like there's a type of lutf and a type of, a type of enjoyment a person has in seeing someone who's beautiful. That's not going to necessarily like result in, something further along in the process. It's not going to result in like whatever, an erection or so, something like that. It's not going to result in those things. But that lutf itself, a person should hold themselves back from it. And your girl cousins may laugh at you and mock you for like looking away or looking down or whatever. But most women will respect you for that because they're accustomed to a lifetime worth of men, basically. Trying to offer them intimate relations in many different ways. So they'll respect the fact that you respect them. If they don't, I don't know what to do. I mean, at some point, you shouldn't go out of your way to offend people, but at the same time, you're not going to make everybody happy, and making people happy is not a reason to destroy yourself. So you got to navigate that, like all of us do. Hi, Mahmoud Sarkar asks, how do we handle boundaries in terms of employment? Employment is a necessity. So you just interact with the people of the opposite gender at your employment, as long as as long as as long as it's what's needed for your employment, and you don't fear crossing any boundary with anybody. That much is forgiven, inshallah. A random YouTuber asks how to avoid shaking the hands of older female cousins without being scolded by the family. First of all, there's a precept in the Sharia: لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There's no allowance for obedience or obeying the creation in the disobedience of the Creator. So if you're grown adult, as we say in the in the millennial youngster language, you're a grown-ass man. Then what your family says and what they don't say, you should have a thick skin with regard to it. If they scold you for not eating pork, then you still don't eat pork. And if they scold you, because something like that is haram. To touch the skin of a non-mahram woman is an enormity, and it's just inviting halak. It's inviting destruction on a person. It's not a good thing. It's not only is it haram, but there's like a gross violation and clear violation of this this precept of keeping separation between the genders. So like other things, it's important not to escalate things unnecessarily. So you can be polite, you can explain politely. If afterward people don't understand and they don't want to understand it, they don't want to accept the deen, we're not gonna kill ourselves or destroy our deen just in order to satisfy the ignorant expectations of ignorant people. Even most American non-Muslims, at some point or another, they respect the fact that you have your religion and you believe what you believe. And if people who don't care about the deen, even if they're our relatives, they can't have that much respect for us, then the Sharia even allows you to avoid them to some degree in order to protect your deen. But you don't have to, there's oftentimes with all these things, people look at them through like a legalistic lens. There's a way of circumnavigating a lot of these problems, but that's more of an art and less of a science. It's not, the subject of it is less fiqh, and it's just more like the school of being alive. That's why it's fun to hang out with people who have like large families, because they oftentimes get they're really adept at dealing with different types of people, and dealing with human beings, my goodness, is a lifelong struggle. And Allah protect us. This is one of the du'as of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-huzn wa a'udhu bika min al-jubni wal-bukhl wa a'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasal wa a'udhu bika min dala' ad-dayn wa qahr ar-rijal. He said that I seek refuge in you from the destructive grief about what happened in the past that like destroys my today, and the destructive fear of tomorrow that destroys my today, and the destructive grief about what happened yesterday that destroys my today. And I seek refuge in you from incompetence, ajaz, inability to do the things I need to get done in my life, wal kasal, and from the laziness that prevents me from doing what I need to do. And I seek refuge from you, in you from cowardice and from miserliness that prevents me from spending on those things that I need to spend on. And I seek refuge in you from being so in debt that it bends me under its pressure, and that other human beings should ever have the upper hand over me, or that they should like control me, or that they should like overwhelm me, and I just be like their prisoner. And we should make these du'as. Sometimes dealing with human beings is really difficult. Always ask Allah for help. And in general, conflict is a tool in a person's toolkit for dealing with other human beings, but its avoidance is generally the path of least resistance. And avoiding people is better than getting into conflict with them. And trying to understand where they're coming from and trying to assuage, their fears or their issues is better than avoiding them. And Bhai Yusuf Ruben Batista says, Alhamdulillah, for big families, really it is a blessing. Really it is a blessing. And that's how, the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who were his biggest haters? They're all his relatives, right? Abu Jahl, it's his uncle. He's a hater. Abu Lahab was his father's brother, and he was a complete hater. He was a total hater. Literally, he was such a hater. Banu Hashim, all of Banu Hashim, the Muslims amongst them, and the people who hadn't accepted Islam yet, they all disowned him because of how much of a hater he was. He actually sided against his own family just because he hated the Prophet ﷺ so much. Abu Talib, he wasn't a hater. He loved the Prophet ﷺ. He still didn't accept the deen, though. You see all these subtleties, nuances. The Prophet ﷺ had to deal with all of them, and that was Jahiliyyah. So Bhai Ruben, you and like all of us, be charming. Dress nicely, wear good clothes. Give out the best presents. When it's time for Eid or when it's time to do so. Speak well. Do good by people. Be a good guy. Inshallah, maybe some of those people who are on the fence will join you, and maybe the ones who hate you the most one day, when they'll flip the hardest, and you'll see those cats at the masjid, like yelling at everybody else, why aren't you praying? And you're like, man, this dude gave me the hardest time when I just accepted Islam. Anyhow, we're wandering away from fiqh and into Oprah Winfrey territory here. So we're gonna reel it back in here a little bit. So he says, وَقَدْ أُرْخِصَ لِلْخِطَابِ. It's there's some dispensation for looking at a woman for the purposes of marriage, and that's in hijab. مَا عَدَى الْوَجْهَ وَالْكَفَّيْنِ, that a man can look at the face of a woman and the hands. You have all of these crank fatwas rolling around saying that you see the entire body of a woman naked if you intend on marrying her, and though that opinion seems like real intellectual until the person who's giving it to it say, okay, let me see your daughter, I'm interested in marrying her, let me send her some pics of me, and then it becomes personal and people, how dare you, this and that, and blah blah blah. The reason is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. The reason that fiqh doesn't work is that if you're offended by the idea, then it's like it should be intuitive to you why that it doesn't work that way. This leads us to a small segment. I generally try to avoid mentioning people like this because they're the beast only grows stronger by giving more attention. So that's why we'll bury it in the middle of the dars, that the two-eyed Dajjal from Birmingham, an individual who I actually personally have no problem with. He's actually kind of a fun guy to hang out with as a human being, but for whatever reason, when the camera turns on, he has this weird need to say the dumbest of things in order to get attention, which is fine. You should have been a comedian instead of going to madrasa, or you could have been a comedian despite going to madrasa, but don't make the deen into your mockery. But he just says the kufriest of things in order to elevate himself higher and higher in his his addiction to attention. Allah protect us. Allah give us from his attention the attention that we don't need, the attention of the creation afterward. And so he had another video. Legions of people sent it to me, in which he basically badmouthed me. He lied and said that I had said something in a certain place. I challenged him. I said, show proof that I ever said that. I never said that. He lied and said that I told them that the Maliki madhab, that the nikah is a certain way, even though it's another way, and he's showing how incompetent I was. Even though I taught not only the Maliki, I've been teaching the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd for years. I even taught the Molvis, the Hanafi Molvis and Dar al-Qasim. All of them are upright witnesses. They can tell you that I taught that mas'ala and other masail correct and directly out of this book that we're reading from. I ignored it. I didn't mention it, and I don't need to mention it. But now, mashallah, he's even stopped calling himself a Maliki. It was obvious for years that he's not a Maliki. So he even stopped calling himself a Maliki. He just goes by Abu Layth now. And so apparently today he put out a video in which he mocked me for reading Sahih Bukhari for the lifting of the calamity of the coronavirus. And look, first of all, you're attributing such a big act to me. Who am I? I only read 3 kitabs. I read the kitab Dhabayah and the kitab Sayd, and I read the kitab al-Ihsar, for the person who is obstructed from making it to the Masjid al-Haram. It's 3 chapters, and there's so many, like, dozens of kutub of Bukhari. And the idea wasn't even mine. It was of our elder, Maulana Sheikh Ameen Kulwadia, who's the principal of Darul Qasim, whose series on the Risala Qushayriya on Darul Qasim's YouTube page is really awesome, and you should listen to it. So it was his idea, and he attributed it to me. Who am I to receive this honor? And everybody, all the ulama from our Chicago read it, but he attributed the reading to me. Who am I to deserve this honor, mashallah? And he mocked Sahih Bukhari, even though he knows that Allah Ta'ala, his own book says, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ, that the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam doesn't speak from vain desire. Rather, everything he says is a revelation that's revealed to him, to the point where the ulama have considered the speech of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to be wahi ghayr matlu, that it is there's 2 types of revelation: the revelation which is recited, which is the Quran; the revelation that's not recited, which is the Hadith. Even though he knows that the Quran itself says, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ, that whatever the Rasul gives you, take it, and whatever the Rasul forbids you from, abstain from it, and fear Allah Ta'ala, and know that Allah Ta'ala is indeed severe in his torment and severe in his chastisement. He knows all of that, but he's just going to make a mockery of the Sahih Bukhari, even if you don't believe that all of its hadiths are Sahih, which is a very crank position to take amongst the muhaddithin. But at least some of the hadiths in it are Sahih, but he goes on and mocks the book. And then he falsely accuses me of saying that this is how we're going to solve coronavirus. Look, how are you going to solve coronavirus? The doctors are going to work on a vaccine. You're going to do social distancing. You're not going to sneeze and wipe it on people. And when they sneeze, you're not going to let them wipe you with it. You're going to do all of those things. I never said that reading Sahih Bukhari is the only way, the only way that a person is going to ward off calamity. But at the same time, the maqal of the Prophet ﷺ is a type of wahi, and it has its own barakah. And as much as crank muftis may or may not like it, right? Muhammadur Rasulullah is part of our shahada, and there's a barakah that comes with it. And that knowledge is preserved through reading these books. And he quoted that the Mongols, when they invaded, the ulama read Sahih Bukhari, and look, they all got killed. No, actually, they didn't all get killed. Actually, a number of places were defended. And actually, what happens to all the Mongols? The 4 great factions of the Mongols, right? The Ilkhanate, which is in Iran, the Golden Horde, which is closer to Russia, and of the different factions of the Mongols, 3 out of 4 of them actually end up becoming Muslim. And the 4th one, which is the Khanate of Kublai Khan in China, they're the ones that bring the greatest cultural influence of Islam into China. And many of the Hui Muslims actually come into China through them, and many of the deep, lasting impacts of Islam and the Muslims on China come through them through the Mongols. So, mock it all you want, laugh it up, inshallah. I never said that reading Sahih Bukhari is like the only thing to solve coronavirus. Rather, aqilha wa tawakkal ala Allah, do all the other things, but don't forget the fact that the madad comes to this ummah from the higher realm through the dhikr of Allah Ta'ala and through the ittiba', the following of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in his worship, in his speech, in his noble states, in his outward and inward form. As much as we can conform to it, that's how much we will benefit. So yes, these are the type of crank muftis that will give you these opinions that you can look at the entire naked body of a woman if you're interested in marrying her. But try that with their daughters, and they'll at least they have enough fitrah to freak out about it. God protect us if any of them is like okay, and God protect their daughters as well. Allah Ta'ala protect the ummah from the once a person, the hadith of the Prophet, if you don't have lam tastahi fasna' ma shi't, if you don't have any haya, if you don't have any shame or any modesty or any shyness, then do whatever you want, because there's really nothing left for you in your aql, in your aql, or in your deen, or in your heart. والعياذ بالله. ومن الفرائض صون اللسان عن الكذب والزور والفحشاء والغيبة والنميمة والباطل كله. From the fara'id, from the obligations also, is to protect the tongue, to guard the tongue from what? From speaking a lie, from bearing false witness. So a lie is obviously saying something that's not true. Bearing false witness is an even worse kind of lie, because the difference between like a witness and just a statement is that when you bear witness, it's a statement that's in a particular context, in a context that has to do with someone's rights. So if you lie at that occasion, then someone's rights will be taken away. If you just tell somebody, hey, 2 + 2 = 7, that's bad enough. But like if you go to a court and say, yeah, I saw this person break the other person's window, and the court imposes a punishment on them, it's not only the lie, but you also then wrongfully destroy somebody else's right. And so that's what zur is. And fahsha is indecency. Now fahsha in a person's deeds is indecency in deeds is what is things of like sexual nature, things that are illicit of a sexual nature, sexual perversion or zina, or just some sort of indecency of a sexual nature. That's what a fahish, amal fahish is. Fahsha in a person's speech is what? Fahsha in a person's speech is just to be excessive, to curse, or to just use excessive language. I swear to God, for everything, wallah la ilaha illahu and kada, just for everything, for no reason. This is the dumbest person in the world, he's so stupid. It's just being excessive in your speech all the time. We're forbidden from that. Wal ghiba, to speak about your brother, the thing that they wouldn't like. Wal namima, to talebear, meaning to tell people about each other's faults. There's a really beautiful story Qurtubi mentions about Banu Israel, that Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, that the sacrifice of the qawm and the du'as of the qawm weren't being accepted, and Allah Ta'ala, Sayyidina Musa asked why isn't it being accepted? And he said that fikum nammam, there's a person who's a talebearer. He's just going around from one person to another, spreading, telling people bad things about each other. And Sayyidina Musa came back and gathered Banu Israel and basically exhorted them, made a wa'adh, a sermon basically about how bad talebearing is and how you have to repent, and because of this Allah is not accepting from us, etc. And still Allah wasn't accepting from them their sacrifices. So Allah, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam asked Allah, he says, Ya Allah, tell me who is this Namam, will take him out of Banu Israel and punish him. And Allah said to Sayyidina Musa, how can I make saying bad things about others haram on you, and then you want me to then say something bad about this person? I'm not going to tell you who it is. And Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam then told that this is what Allah told him to the whole Banu Israel. And then that person was so moved by that they repented, and Allah accepted from them. Now, this may be ironic because I just took our UK friends. Is anyone here from the UK? right? He just took the mick out of the two-eyed Dajjal of Birmingham. Allah Ta'ala guide him to something better. Like I said, I have no personal beef with him. Actually, as like a human to human, like when we sit and drink chai, he's like a fun guy to hang out with. I just don't know why when he gets in front of the camera, he says all these things about deen. There are certain, just like there are certain Sharia countenanced exceptions to looking at the awra of a non-mahram, just like that, there are certain Sharia countenanced exceptions to the hurma and the prohibition of backbiting and tailbearing. And when somebody, as a position of a scholar, is saying something wrong about the deen, it is the duty of the ulama to make rad on them, to refute them. And like I said, this man, if he didn't deny the recoming of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam and many thawabit and qawati' in deen that are necessarily known, I wouldn't have mentioned it. And if it wasn't that he was mocking Sahih Bukhari, or if it wasn't that he was misrepresenting things that I said, I wouldn't have mentioned it. In fact, a lot of his weird fiqh opinions, I never used to say anything about them. It's just when he started saying things in Aqidah that were kufr, I couldn't really, like, it's at that point, then the Sharia doesn't allow me to stay silent about it. Otherwise, Allah Ta'ala give all of us, tawbah, and give us tawfiq to make tawbah. I undoubtedly have many shortcomings and faults. Allah rectify them as well for me. Yaghfir Allahu lana wa lakum, yaghfir Allahu lana wa lakum, yuslihu balana wa balakum. Allah Ta'ala forgive all of us, and Allah Ta'ala rectify all of our shortcomings. Anyway, so Allah Ta'ala also made it haram, that it's haram, a person has to guard their tongue from batil, from speaking just plain falsehood. And batil from it has to do with also spreading batil ideologies. There are people, like there's a woman, unfortunately, I think she's probably just flown the coop. I have a hard time anyone could like credibly believe these things, but there was a woman professor by the name of Amina Wadud who A'udhu Billah, called Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam a deadbeat dad for leaving Sayyidina Ismail and Sayyidina Hajar in Mecca. Well, guess what? Allah Ta'ala elevated them to a rank through that which they wouldn't have reached had they fit her idea of like what they should do and how they should be as a family. Sayyidina Hajar alayhi salam and Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam are actually buried inside, by tradition, they're buried inside the Hijr, the semicircular wall that is adjoined to the current building of the Kaaba, which is also inside of the Kaaba. They're actually literally buried inside of the Kaaba. If a person can imagine that their arwah are connected to that place, and they're nourished by the barakat, the shower on the earth in that place, the 120 mercies of Allah Ta'ala shower on that place. They're literally bathing in the mercy and barakah of Allah Ta'ala. But this woman gave her batil opinion. Allah Ta'ala ordered that the tongue be protected from that you're not allowed to talk about that. وَالْبَاطِلِ كُلُّهُ, all of batil is haram to speak on the tongue. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. And these are two very great usul of the deen. If you want to be an alim, you want to be a faqih in the sense that the Salaf understood, it doesn't necessitate memorizing large volumes of information. Rather, it necessitates understanding the reality of things. Then after you understand the reality of things, the usul that govern the universe, then large amounts of information actually allow you to have a more high-res picture, just like this YouTube stream is like a high-res, it's 720p stream. What's the point of having a 1080p stream and it's all just 1080 of static? The usul is what allows you to see the big picture, and then the information is the resolution of those data points. And so if you want to be a faqih, if you want to be an alim, these are the big picture things you have to remember. He brings two hadiths, and it's really deep. This is one of the reasons I love this book, is that these are things that even a person who doesn't have the lifetime of study that they can put in, they can, if you can't memorize 100,000 hadiths with the text and the chain of narration, memorize these two hadiths and see how it puts a lot of pieces of the puzzle into place. One is whoever believes in Allah and in the last day, let them say something good or let them stay silent. Whoever believes in Allah, let them say something good or let them stay silent. Now, this is, how come I can't, if it's not haram, why can't I just say, no, let them say something good that's benefit or let them stay silent. And why is that? It's because the next hadith he is going to read, which is min husn islam imri'in, or min husn islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi, from the beauty of the Islam of a person, right? It may not be haram, it may not be a sin, but if you want to have husn, if you want to have ihsan in your deen, if you want to be a beautiful Muslim, you want to be beautiful in front of the Lord, and the one who's beautiful in front of Allah Ta'ala makes that person beautiful too. Those from the creation that have beauty themselves, and those from the creation that have connection with Him, Allah will make them beautiful in this world and make them beautiful on the day they die, and make them beautiful the day they're resurrected, and beautiful in Jannah forever and ever. You see all these people, mashallah, Bhai Sharjil and Bhai Nabil and Ruben Batista, all inshallah by Allah's fadl, and whoever, all Bilal Khan, all these people, whether I take your name or don't, who cares? Allah Ta'ala, as long as He takes your name in that list, that's what matters, right? If your name is not taken by Hamza, who cares? As long as it's taken by Allah Ta'ala. Those people who Allah Ta'ala makes beautiful on that day and completes and perfects their nur on that day, those people will be beautiful forever. If you want to be beautiful in your Islam, how do you achieve that? Min husn Islam imri'in. The husn, the beauty of the Islam of a person is what? Tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi. Leave those things that don't concern you. You were created to be the beloved of Allah. You were created to love Allah and to be His beloved. You were created to be consumed and subsumed and elated, like the kasra before alif lam is elided into the alif lam, like the tanween before a ra or before a meme becomes mudgham into the ra and the meme that comes after. You were created to be consumed into what? Into the ishq and the love of Allah Ta'ala and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So who cares what someone is squawking, and who cares what the orange-headed demon is saying? Who cares what the clown of Qadian is saying? Who cares what Master Fraud is saying, or his Dajjalic emissary is saying? Who cares about any of those things at some point or another? Allah commands us to say something about them, we say it. Otherwise, they don't consume our hearts. When we're done, we're done. Who cares about any of those things? The beauty, if you want to be beautiful in front of the Lord, leave the things that don't concern you. And the corollary to that is that you should make yourself busy with those things that do. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq of making amal on those two hadiths. Really, if you can do that, then all these long-winded hour-long lessons on YouTube and things like that, there's no real, a lot of the need for those things go away. At most, if the lessons are executed properly and executed well, it's like a bonus round. But there's enough of a balagh, there's enough provision in these couple of pieces of prophetic wisdom that we read in Bukhari, by the way. There's enough of it that it can get you to your maqam. Hafiz ibn Abdul Barr, Hafiz al-Maghrib, Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, the Qurtuban Hafiz of Hadith, who was actually, by the way, the Qadi of Lisbon at one time, which makes me love Lisbon, even though I've never really stopped at the airport once, I guess, but I never went into the city. But when I think Ibn Abdul Barr was Qadi here, I'm like, this place, there must be some barakah in that place still from that. But Ibn Abdul Barr said, من طلب العلم لله فقليل يكفيه ومن طلب العلم للناس فحوائج الناس كثيرة. Whoever seeks knowledge for the sake of Allah, then a little bit will be enough for them. These couple of hadiths that we mentioned, Ibn Abi Zayd is a connoisseur. He picks the narrations and puts them in the place that they're needed in order for a person to get the maximum ilmi benefit. Whoever seeks knowledge for the sake of Allah, then a little bit of knowledge will be enough for them. And whoever seeks knowledge then to be able to answer people's questions, then people have a lot of needs. So you'll keep studying and they'll keep coming up with crazier and crazier questions as the days go by. Allah Ta'ala give us what we need from this sacred knowledge, and from this nur, and from this tawfiq, and from this himma and courage, and from this stamina, and from this energy, and from this protection, what we need in order to get through this life in such a way that we die with La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on our lips and inside of our hearts, and so that He can take us in a beautiful way and give us a maqam with His awliya forever and ever in Jannah, and that we pass from this world loving Him, and that more important than that, that He loves us. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم ربنا تقبل منا سماعنا هذا الدرس وكلامنا، واغفر لنا ما تجاوز عن حدودك منه، ووفقنا لما تحب وترضى به، واختم لنا بالحسنى، وارفع بأيدينا راية الإسلام. بركة الفاتحة. Apologize. Just before jumping off, I remember there was a question I said I would answer at the end by Ruben Joseph Batista. Asks super basic Maliki Fiqh question. I know that the basmala is makruh in the salah, but what is the status of Ameen for the musalli? Is it part of the Fatiha? Is it fard or sunnah mu'akkada? The mu'akkada is with the kaf, not with the qaf, by the way. Jazakallah khair wa iyana wa iyakum. So saying Ameen is not part of the Fatiha. However, it's one of the adab of reciting the Fatiha. And so if you are praying alone, you will say the Fatiha and you will say Ameen. And if you're the Imam, you'll say the Fatiha and you will not say Ameen. And if you're the follower, you will not say the Fatiha, but you will say, if you're the follower in a loud prayer, I should say, you will not say the Fatiha, but you will say Ameen. But you will in no case say the Ameen out loud. You just move your lips and your tongue. You don't say it out loud in the salat. And if you're praying alone or if you're praying in a quiet prayer, then you'll read both. And Allah knows best. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalam.